To start out, I am going to demonstrate a few of our new drawing and design features. So really, um, on brand with the topic of the webinar tonight. So that's really exciting. So if you've logged into Giraffe recently, you may have noticed some changes to to some of the drawing tools. So when you draw a building now and you click on it, there is this selection box that appears around the building, and that was always there. But what you might notice now is that in 3D view, you have a lot more control than you previously did. So I can now rotate this building in 3D view. I can scale this building up and down in 3D view. And then, as well as those enhanced controls, I also have some better interactivity with some of the handles on the shapes here. So when you probably know when you click on one of these center nodes, it will add an additional corner to your building. But now when I mouse over it, it indicates that a little bit better with this plus sign, and it gets a little larger, a little easier to see. And the same thing with these pull handles here. So we're just, constantly improving, making everything a little bit easier, a little bit faster every day. To go along with making everything a little easier and a little faster, we've also implemented everyone's favorite Alt drag to copy. So if I just hold down Alt on my keyboard and drag this shape over, I will end up here with a second version of that shape. It is probably in your workflows going to take over copy paste like we were all used to before, because now if I just hold down Alt and click a couple of times, I will end up with another copy of that building right on top of the first one. Much faster than copy paste. I just made a really giant building in a couple of clicks. Really, really fun, really, really fast. Another great enhancement that came with the recent update is the split tool. And this one I think is going to be everyone's favorite. So you can now, using the X shortcut on your keyboard, just come in here and divide the shape into multiple pieces instantly. This is really awesome for dividing up floor plans. So maybe part of this building I want to be commercial and another part I want to designate as maybe an amenity space. Super easy now to make those changes and update those designations with that split tool. And then the last couple of things we have are just on a little bit more accuracy in your drawing. So the holding down Shift on your keyboard now snaps the move to an orthographic angle to north, south, east, west. So this combined, especially with your Alt drag. So if I hold down Alt and Shift, I'm going to be able to move this over parallel to the first shape that I moved. So that's really excellent. And then we've always had Control C for copy, but now we finally have Control X for cut. So I can just grab that shape and paste it somewhere else if I wish. So I just did paste to center. So no more, having to delete something if you want to move it somewhere else. You got that Control X for cut. And then, so that's all of our fun new drawing tools. And then possibly even more exciting is our terrain enhancements. So I am going to recenter this project. I modeled up a little neighborhood here. Some of you may be familiar with the steepest street in the world in New Zealand. So I just grabbed some geometry from that location. And of course, in classic Giraffe, this is all flat. So it's not really telling the story of what's happening here. But now with the release of terrain, I can just jump in here, enable my terrain. And once that loads up, there we go. Now I have a visual of the terrain contours within my site boundaries by default. But I can also expand that to go beyond the site boundary if I want to visualize everything around it. And what's really nice about this new version of terrain is that your giraffe geometries are going to drape over it. So all of your landscape elements, your trees, your roads, all drape along the terrain, giving you a much nicer visual and more accurate, more accuracy in your project. And then the last thing about terrain that is super great is not only is it good for visuals and understanding maybe your, building heights, but now we can also calculate cut and fill. So I am going to add a building pad shape. I'll just zoom into this little section down here. And by adding a building pad, I'm telling Giraffe, okay, this is an area that I want to set an elevation datum for and be able to calculate how that elevations that I set is going to affect my cut and fill calculations. So I can jump in here and hopefully grab the correct shape. It is grabbing my terrain because it's on top. Let me turn on X-ray click real quick. There we go. So now that I've grabbed my my building pad, you can see I can set my elevation datum. I can set my angle of repose. So I have really good control over how I want to calculate those cut and fill. So you can see as soon as I edit that, it's going to make some changes. Maybe if I make this, 100 meters high, it's going to be quite obvious the change here. So now that my building pad is much higher than the terrain elevation, you're seeing it turn green, which means that it is a fill area. And it just helps you to visualize those changes that you're making. And then, of course, it's counting all of those changes as well. What's really cool here is that not only is it counting your cut and fill in the terrain app, but you can also pull those calculations into your analytics project and apply cost information to it. So no more misses there on your changes to the site. You can add those right into your pro forma as part of your feasibility analysis as well. So those are our two newest features, the drawing tool enhancements and our terrain tool. So really excited to hear all of your feedback about those things. If you have any questions, you can feel free to email us. And with that, I'm very excited to introduce Rob to you all and let Rob take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Holly. I will grab the screen and show Giraffe. Okay, you should be able to see Giraffe. Is that right?
Yep, you're good to go.
Great. Okay. All right. So what I thought I'd do today is do a design, and I'll do it 3 times with increasing levels of detail. What Giraffe has designed, or what our design job is, to make a tool that for architects or developers or people thinking about a piece of property allows them to be creative. And so I often think about it as an expressive medium. Like, how do you use this tool to express an idea, as opposed to analyze or look at data or visualize? How can you use it as an expressive tool? So I'm just going to choose a site at random over here. Let's do this one right here. Okay. And I'm gonna do a couple of personas. So the first persona I'll be is a developer. So say this market, I've gotten a call that this market here, corner of Oxley and Aitchison Street, is for sale. And now this I know because I'm in Sydney, and I think our users know their geographies really well, the cities and areas in which they live. at this St Leonard's, there's a hospital and a train station here, and there's a new metro over here. So this is a great site. There's a lot happening here, and probably new zoning. So as a developer, I would just start a new project, and I'm just going to use the Giraffe New South Wales layer template to bring in various data sets, including the cadastre, the zoning, and the height. So you can see here, if I turn off the 3D buildings, we've got 16 meters, and we've got this R4 zoning and quite a big site over here. And the first thing about design is understanding context. If you don't understand context, then it's almost impossible to design a successful building, because buildings are not objects in space; they are objects within a city. But as a developer, very quickly, I'm probably focused on floor space. Is there a deal here? The questions I'm trying to answer are: should I spend money on figuring out a design? Like, is this a go or not? And so I'm just going to draw. I'll actually right click and just create it. I'm just going to create a very simple box, right? And I'm going to say it's going to be some retail, because that I understand in the market is what's needed. And on top of that, I'm going to put some residential. Okay, this is a design. It's got a height. I'll drop that down. This has got a height of 16 meters, and it's R4. And we're assuming here that this is mixed use. So we're assuming here that this is mixed use over here. That the council is going to want more and more mixed use, dense urbanism. And so, very frequently when we're doing designs for sites, we're looking at the zoning, but we may be not entirely considering it as an absolute hard constraint. And this is a very crude, very, very quick design that sort of has taken less than 3 minutes. But it's taken us somewhere. So now let's save this project and share it with our architect. Right now, I'll save it. And now I'm going to start thinking about this as a designer. And this is where how critical it is to express yourself well. This is the architect's job, basically. I'm going to turn off that imagery because it's a bit distracting, and also all of these zones. I'll leave the cadastre on. And the first thing I, as an architect, would be doing is zooming out away from the building and actually starting to think about the approach and analyze this site. And we've just added a few nice little versions or little tools that help you do site analysis. And it's normally starting kind of zoomed out and highlighting areas of interest. So here's Willoughby Road, which is obviously, well, not obviously, which we know here is a busy kind of pedestrian retail dining strip and eat street. We know that the station's over here, so maybe I'll put a little icon over there. Now, this is partly to inform my design. It's also partly to communicate what's going on to, back to the developer, back to the council, so that people understand, that we understand what's going on. But it's also good for us to, actually explicitly do these things and say, okay, well, here's the future metro, and I'll add a little subtitle there, future metro. And I may draw some arrows that just show me how these things may connect. So my site over here, I can imagine people walking from the train station to Willoughby Road. Now, does that make a difference to the design? Potentially about which frontage and the identity of this building. I can also imagine people walking from, I'll get one of those dashed arrows again, from this metro. Maybe they come out of the metro here down Oxley, come to my site over here. And I may also put some dimensions just so that I can start understanding what is the size of my site and the size of this development. And having those explicitly done is always useful. And you can see here the highly graphical nature of what we're doing, as in this is very, very simple and very, very quick to express. And we should probably pop on the surrounding context. I may actually filter out our building so we can turn it off and leave the rest on. So I'm just going to draw a boundary in the lens. And that's going to turn off our building. And then on the style here, I'll crank that to the maximum. And that should be that. Okay, so we can see the building surrounding our building, and we've got these graphics. All right, And now I think we should do something. So maybe in conversation, we say, well, look, why don't we seek a rezoning change? Why don't we make an argument that this site is prominent? It's on a connection between Willoughby and the train station and the metro. There's tall buildings to the south, or to the south and the west of it. And so a nice residential tower here with maybe some, maybe some share work, third space type of office in the podium is something that we think the market would bear, and we want to get the council to agree. All right. So we're 6 minutes in and we've got some analysis and we've got something to show and talk about. Now let's actually spend some time designing the object, right? So we're not designing the object in a void. We're not in like a blank gray space. We're in a context. I may actually add just a couple more arrows. I'm going to do this to remind myself that that's where the sun is from. And I'll make that sort of sun colored, I guess, something like that. So that's north. We've got the sun here, and we can move it around. But again, having a diagram is very nice. All right. And I'm going to turn off this default option, which is what what we sort of just plopped on the page to understand the areas, and create a new option, which will be called option 1. And now we're going to start telling the story. Okay, so I'm going to turn, what I'll actually also do is I'm going to put all of this stuff on an annotation layer. So I'll create a drawing layer called annotation. And everything that I've got selected, and I'll just deselect the building and the residential and pop everything else on annotation. That way I can turn off the building and leave the annotation on. And then normally I'll lock the annotation just so I don't accidentally keep clicking it. Okay, so we've got some, now we can actually start thinking. And I think what we will do is we'll take the whole podium. So let's, the ground floor is going to be that, and it will be retail. But we're going to need some underground car parking. So the first refinement that we're going to do is put a car park. Now, I guess the options for the car park entrance are over here or over here, because we wouldn't want to put the car park entrance on this nice prominent corner. Sorry, I'm just going to get onto option 1. And so because Atchison Street is probably more prominent than Oxley, maybe we'll say that the basement car park entry is going to be on this street here, which I forgot the name, Oxley. And so I've drawn on the wrong layer. Option 1 and activate option 1. There we go. And so what I'll do is I'll just pull this back 6 meters and leave that for now. And then I'll draw a curve over here. Just because I'm thinking from a design perspective, how do we give, it's nice to do something geometrically to make this building understandable. And remember, this building at this point is really about a concept and a story that we're trying to tell to ourselves, to our investors, to council. So we should be thinking about practical matters like car parking, etc., but we shouldn't be getting too distracted by it. We're trying to make something happen, that's not nothing. And then I'm going to put like a little terrace and sort of craft this podium a bit. Maybe keep the street wall over here, and maybe keep it over there as well. I'll bring this back slightly. The reason I put that terrace is it's on the north. And I'd probably bring this commercial over because the car park, well, we don't need to waste that space. There's obviously going to be service areas and cores, but I'm not going to think about that at the moment. And then I'll start thinking about some residential on the top. Now, obviously, the residential being north facing is very pleasing for those who are listening or watching from the Northern Hemisphere. Swap that round. So your south is our north. That's the sun comes from the north, and Sydney actually gets colder than people think in winter. And so sitting in the sun and is very nice for a lot of the year. And there's actually there's a policy directive in New South Wales that 75% of your apartments have to get 2 hours of sun in midwinter when the sun is at about these angles. So the sun rises, sort of rises about there and sets about there. So I'm trying to create a building here that sort of is oriented to maximize the north face. The north face, obviously the west and the east face will get some sun, but I'm also sort of dealing with the constraints of this nearly square site. So I'm, making this kind of L shape. The reason I'm gravitating towards orienting the building in this direction, and I'll draw a major arrow just to show it, is because this is the street, whereas this is going to be very, very quiet and protected. Okay, and so now I may think to myself, this is good. And just as we're going, we're 11 minutes in. You may not like the design, and you would probably be highly justified not to. But be observing the techniques, I guess, would be the most important thing. I'm just showing you some of the expressive things that I can do. All right, so I've made this like a smooth wedding cake on top of this this residential, sorry, on top of this commercial, and that shape is really, it's not working at all. So let's do something like this, make this sort of sculpted landscape of a with terraces, and so this podium is broken down a bit. Still not working, but that's fine. And then we may as well go for gold and try and get an additional bit of height, because why not? All right, and so now so we spent 2 minutes or 3 minutes doing the first one, which is the default one, just throwing something down. Okay, yes, worth thinking about. There's 2,000 square meters of GFA. We're building it for 5, we're selling it for 20 or whatever it is. Some back of the napkin in maths. There's a deal here. This is actually an exciting site, and now we've sort of scrapped that, and we've drawn some stuff, and we've gotten to a point where we actually have a sculpted bit of mass that's attractive enough to look at, or could be, to some people considered attractive enough. And there's also logic to it. We've thought about address, we've thought about approach, we've thought about sun, we've thought about context, and we're ready to go to council. So flick it over, pre-DA, or maybe it's our statutory planning partner, maybe our retail expert, maybe we're talking to tenants now, like, are we going to do, or maybe we're going to split this thing like this, and split this thing like this, and say, okay, well, why don't we pull and do some small retail tenancies like this, that can also lead to the core. So that can be the street address of the residential building. And this nice little 116 square meter tenancy is going to work well as a cafe. This will work as a Tesla showroom, and this one can be a Coles or a mini mart or something like that. So we're at the next level. We're actually thinking, okay, in terms of how this asset is going to function and work, we've done some more. Okay, so let's imagine this goes through some consultation, market sounding. What size should the apartments be? How premium? Who's the market? Is it student accommodation? Is it downsizes? Is it, whatever, young families? And we come back and we say, all right, we've got a scheme. We need to bring down, construction costs to quite a simple scheme. But in general, this is going to work, right? So we're going to go to option 3. So I'm going to create a drawing layer and call it option 3. And now we're going to go one level further. So you can see, we're always adding detail, refining and refining. I'm going to get rid of this annotation just because it's distracting. And I'm actually going to use flow a little bit now. So again, I'm going to start from scratch. I could copy from option 2, but I'm going to start from scratch because for those who sat through lots and lots of design meetings, you will know that 3 options is absolutely not what's going to be happening. There's going to be 25 options minimum, even though they'll be called option 3, but it'll be 3B, 3D, 3B, 2. So we're going to pretend that we've sort of gone through a whole huge amount of optioneering, and what I want to demonstrate here is the refinement of Giraffe's capability to go that little step beyond just these kind of Lego blocks. All right, so we're building like a tiny little mini retail precinct. And probably there's enough access, we don't need a through-side link over there. So let's do something like that. All right, and now what we can do is we can use Flow Builder to make this a bit nicer. So I'm going to show its openness, right? I'm I'm going to open the flow builder and start doing something. I'm going to do stroke dash. You see it disappears. Don't worry, we can get it back. And here's a little trick to create facades. You do a 2 meter stroke and then a 0.2 meter dash. Or we can pull out the dashes and then we can offset those dashes as polygons, 0.2. And you always want to be offsetting to the left in giraffe land. Left is out and right is in, because we always make our polylines go either clockwise or anti-clockwise. And now I'm just going to add the retail use. And I'm just doing that literally just to get the floor to floor height. It's a bit of a hack, but I should probably make a mullion typology, but it's not going to add that much area, and it'll show you sort of what I want to. And if I hit save now, you can see I actually have these mullions, and those are big and very crude mullions. And this is the danger. This is the reason Giraffe doesn't do this immediately, is because you show people that and they go, oh, geez, what are you building from? You know, like logs. It doesn't look refined or elegant at all. So we just don't show facades most of the time in order not to have the question. So what we're going to do is we're just going to reduce the offset, and we may, 2 is probably not enough. So maybe we can get to 3 meters and save that. That looking slightly better. Now what I'll do is I'll pull this out again, and I'm going to do retail again. So we actually pick that area up. But I'm going to remove the facades by adding the no facades, and I'm going to change the color. And I'm going to make it like a nice sort of sandstone-y color, something like this. And save it. All right, so you can see we've got something decent there. Now it's rendering with a step, so we can change what's called the slab thickness, and we can drop that down to 0.05, something like that, just so it's thick enough to render, but not thick enough to distract. Okay, so you can start to see we've actually got something a bit better here, and we can keep the graphics happening, and we can show, you know, this sort of thing. That's probably slightly too big now because we're at a much more zoomed in level. So I've changed that to 1. And I could change the start and end arrow length, but I won't for now. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is just to satisfy our circulation and structural people is I'm going to put the core in, and I'm actually put the core in here. Now, the reason I'm going to do that is because that's going to be to the south of the residential block. I'm going to use the core use, which we don't have. So what I'll do is I'm going to create a core use. And I'm going to copy the residential. I'll actually copy the retail because I don't need a mix. And I'll call that core and change its color to something core. All right. And now if I assign core, we have a core. Okay. Something like this. Now this privacy line, as in what belongs to the retail and what belongs to the tenants, is going to be important. So we can potentially draw something there in the future. I'll leave that for now. And now I'm just going to draw the commercial. And what I'm going to do for the commercial is leave it just as it is and stretch it around so we can see the core. Maybe one of the lifts will go to the commercial, and they'll have an area there where there's space for a lobby. And here's going to be their sort of their shapes, their offices, their windows, and potentially some courtyards. Now you can see because I'm wrapping this commercial around this core, I should change the efficiency up to closer to 100% and the cell efficiency up to 90. I'm going to leave some area for lobby that's not sellable, so I'm just going to modify those efficiencies like that. Cool. All right, and now I can draw some residential. And you can see that over the design process, which is now on its 20th minute, our language has changed substantially. We've now gone from a blocky back to blocks, away from curves, a blockier look. And what I'm also going to have to do is I'm going to have to copy paste that and change the floor to floor so it matches, because I want to try something. So the floor to floor should be 3.2 to match residential. and the level should be bigger, and it should go something like that. Okay, so you can see the commercial has a smaller floor to floor than the retail. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a base height here. The reason for that is actually to hopper that building just above, just because then it'll be nice to get a line, and also it's going to line up with that line over there, which is going to be a pleasing thing. All right, and better align this. I'm going to use our lovely base point rotate command to actually align it, which is something we couldn't do for many a long year. Oh, and I missed it anyway, so it's close enough. And I'm going to demonstrate this, like treat this as a volume and the core as a volume. So I'm kind of getting a tectonic, you know, some sort of organizing principle to this building. And I made this top core, I may shrink back like that. And I may pull this one out like that. Cool, cool. You can see the core slightly in the wrong position, although maybe not. And I want to keep that courtyard concept that I had before, as in orient a lot of the outdoor living areas of these buildings to, if I turn the annotation on, to that's away from this noisy road. And maybe I can do another blur to show that I don't like the road, that it's noisy. And how nice, you know, and maybe I highlight that, the sort of the view and the soul that I'm trying to capture. So I'm trying to break down the building in that direction. There we go, and I'll do one more on top. And just pull it back. Okay. All right, you can see I'm playing around with the stack order. Okay, so now we have a building with, so I'm going to turn those annotations off. We've gone to the next iteration. We've got some articulation. We've got some program. We've taken 23 minutes, but we've got something that's pretty good in terms of its evolution, so and its detail. So let's just go quickly through them all again. Started like that, very useful. No bad, not bad, not to be frowned at. And if this thing doesn't work, nothing's going to work. Then we did an option one, and we sort of made some discoveries, made some moves, which is pretty raggedy. And then with option three, we've taken some of the thoughts of option one and articulated them more and made this into something that actually looks pretty realistic. What I would probably do now is, for presentation, is I would test whether, you know, some of our graphic modes, or I would also play with the colors probably most of all. So let's get this residential to be sort of white, probably a bit lighter than that. Yeah, and I'll get this podium to be more of a sandstone color. So the retail to be sort of something like this. Now, this is not realistic, but it is, and I'll just copy that. I don't mind that too much. It's at least indicative of some sort of materiality. Okay. All right. So I think I'm gonna stop there. I'm gonna show you one more thing, which I thought I would have more time to get through, but I won't, which is how we can actually design facades. I'll bring something in from the design library, but I'll have to change. Workspace. So let me go to our portfolio enterprise workspace. And I'll open the design library, and I'll bring in some template commercial, just because I think it's worth seeing this. I'm going to bring this one in. I'll copy it. I'll go back to the other workspace. You probably will not have as many workspaces as I have, and I'll paste it. I'll paste it in again, and it's pasted to default. All right, so what we're looking at, I'll move it to option 3. What we're looking at here is, let me turn off these 3D buildings, is a template that I've built. And I've got lots of videos showing you how I did this. It's very similar to what I did with that little retail thing. You're just stroke dashing, building mullions, building transoms, and a little inset. But what we get is a building that looks something like this. Now, this may look like a 60s building. The reason for that is that the glazing to solid ratio is approximately right, as in the buildings that we are seeing in the world now, which are much more beautiful, but much more glassy, and it's just get it glassy like this. And then the transom is not 1 point high, it's maybe 0.3 or 0.2. This kind of glazed building, from a performance perspective, doesn't work. So what I was trying to do was think of a way of getting a building that has the right glazing to solid ratio. And you can see the ways that we can do that is I could do a syncopated kind of a grid, do something like this, where I'm building thick mullions and then thin mullions, and trying to get some sort of facade that works. And this is architectural and relatively expressive. Let's say we're happy with this. And I'll just show you that it sort of just stacks up on our building over here. So I could say, actually, as part of our submission to council, rather than just blobs, we want to do facades. I'm using shift just to square this thing off so that all the angles are 90 degrees. I can show something like this. Now it's going to jump because often managing the stack orders of these things is non-trivial. So I'm going to delete that one, and I'm going to copy this over. All right. And you may argue this is too much glazing for a residential, and I would give it to you. But I guess the point here is, and let me just add a base height so they're at the same height. You cannot have them non-aligned. There we go. But this is not looking residential. This is looking purely commercial, and that would be fine. But this is a nice little compact building. And if you are operating in a practice where you're designing a lot of facades, or you do this a lot, you'll have this kind of pattern book where you're able to create these facades and parameterize them like this, and use them in a kind of a snowball of design patterns very, very quickly. So you can go from the block and stack all the way to something that looks like this and now we've been going for 30 minutes. So whoever's still around, congrats. And to finish up, I will just show you some of our pattern books. And then if there's any questions, I'll have those. I'll be happy to take those. Otherwise, thank you very much. So let me get my templates, residential pattern book. So these are all using flows. They're all stretchy and skewy. I'm normally copying an architect. Like I think this is an architectus building. This I copied a Chipperfield building. This one I made up. Looks more developer-esque. This one is Lisbon in Portugal. Just square windows on a block. But hopefully you can sort of see some of the ways you can express yourself using Giraffe. Thank you.
If anyone has any other questions they'd like addressed live, feel free to drop those in the meeting chat. We'll hang out for just a second here. Otherwise, it looks like, Rob, we might be, everyone might just be starstruck by these gorgeous buildings you're showing. Matt just asked, are the examples you're showing parametric or static?
They're all parametric. So everything you see here is parametric. Like that facade I just created, yeah.
Yep, awesome. And then Peter's asking, what are the potential landscape design uses for this?
Great question. And sorry, we chose a site that, or I take full responsibility, which had no landscape. But of course, you can draw as many. You can use these tools, these parametric tools, to describe horizontal landscape elements as well as vertical. So you can see here, I'm parametrically placing some trees. We've got some really nice tools like an avenue. And if I go to, I'll actually go to one of my hotel templates, which has got some little landscape things that I quite like. You can see here I've made a little parametric kind of bench thing. All we're doing is taking a line, rounding it, offsetting it, and adding a little height. We could obviously add a dash array as well. Like say we wanted to do let's do a stroke dash and go 1 to 0.5. And then we get sort of this pattern over there. So this is, you can imagine those are stone blocks. Yeah, absolutely. So paving patterns, vegetation, landscape, with the terrain tool that Holly showed earlier, all those techniques that I've showed sort of managing objects parametrically are going to work for landscape as well.
Awesome. And then Rashid just asked if you could show how to schedule some of these modules that you've just shown us how to repeat.
Okay, so let's say the way that Flow Builder works, sorry, is the output is just like a giraffe thing. It's just like a giraffe geometry. So if I add a property to it, and I'm going to say like bench count, and set it to 1, right? And save. Now, if I come to the analytics and bench count it, I'll be able to add that bench count property. So now I'll just do bench count. It's in benches, I guess. And I'll look for that bench count property, right? And just return it and then sum it. Okay. So that says 16. And that's because, and now it says 35, right? And that, like, if we change any pattern, it's any geometry, any one of these polygons is getting that count of 1. We could return its area. We could get more fancy in terms of subtypes, but the same property, the same approach works for apartments, balconies, facade elements, mullions, any geometry that's created from the flow builder or that you manually draw. You're able to add any parameters you want to it and then schedule off those parameters.
Awesome. And then I have a question about how to break up the floor plate into apartments. It looks like some of those that you designed are actually built off the apartment algorithm, so I'd be interested to see.
Yeah, most of the ones that I built here actually are off the apartment algorithm, which has been
Yeah.
under tremendous development. So if I click on this and I hit Shift A, that's actually showing the apartment layout, right? So I'm now not only parametrically controlling the facade, but I'm actually using the layout to control the facade. So you can see here, we take the apartments, we set them in, and then create this, like these solid blade walls and these very solid chunky balconies. This one is not broken up into apartments. This is potentially more of a commercial, or you're not thinking about apartments. This is a single-sided. Now I've made it double-sided. So you're able to combine the facade thinking and the planning thinking at the same time. One of the features that we're most proud of is this end cap balcony feature, which you can turn the end cap balcony. So say these buildings are sitting right up against each other. You turn those off, but if they're facing the beach on the Gold Coast or in Florida, you can turn the end cap balconies on. So a lot of control on the scheduling, but also on the plan and facade simultaneously.
Awesome. And then we have a question about drawing circular shapes and making building sections, which might be outside the scope of this, since I think it involves going into Rhino. But if you're willing to take that on.
Yeah. So that's right. So first get Speckle and push it into Rhino, and then do it. That is on the roadmap. The long-term roadmap is sections, both vertical and horizontal. The only way currently to make a circle is to make a point. I don't even know how to make a point anymore. Oh yeah, point, and then add an offset. And it won't be a circle so much as I don't know if it's a dodecahedron or whatever it is. Maybe it's 20-sided, but that's also on the roadmap. Is more circular shapes.
Awesome. And then we have one last question about shade analysis with trees. and they're wondering about the shade, the trees applying shading. I don't know if you have
Uh,
for that or
I think I do have a hack for it.
no.
Let's just see if my hack works. So I was speaking to some architects yesterday about canopy cover. Um, so I've got my little landscape over there, and I'm just adding a color. I'm going to make this green, and I'm going to represent trees as hovering canopy. I'll make the corners round, 9, something like that. Okay, so that looks more tree-esque. Probably 9 is too much, so make it like 3. So then you draw your landscape like this. Now, let me just draw a building as well. And I don't know if Johnny's on the call, but this will be amazing to see what happens. Okay, so that tree, this little canopy, which has a height of 4 and a base height of 4, so you know the leaves start at 4, is actually doing the landscape. I do agree it's sub-ideal. Obviously, what we'd want is our actual trees to create shadows, and that is also on the roadmap. So currently, the geometries that are considered by the solar analysis, these GLTF meshes are filtered out. So we're going to just add them in. But that would be the initial hack. The other nice thing about this hack is it can give you accurate canopy cover metrics, because if you are using trees and pi r squared, like the radius, you know, 2 trees that are just next to each other like that, overlapping, even, you know, pi r squared will give you that area, and there's 2 of them, but if they're overlapping, it's hard to do that. Whereas if you draw your trees like this, then it includes the overlapping.
Awesome. And then let's just close out with one more question about what algorithms are included with the software, and maybe a little discussion about how someone might be able to get some of those templates you showed.
Okay, so all the algorithms we have are included. These are the ones that are going to work on lines. I think we've probably got about 30 or 40. We add them all the time. We're different to like a grasshopper in that our algorithms are fewer but bigger. Like we've got that apartment algorithm, which is it's like a mega algorithm, but it looks just like one algorithm. So if I just draw some apartments and open Flow Builder, just looks like that, right? Plus these other ones. So they're all included, and they're continuously upgrading. Currently, what we're working on is an envelope machine. And in terms of those templates that we saw, one of our big projects of the moment is getting those into the base Giraffe. So that kind of content. So I've got hotels, and I've got, you know, all manner of wonderful buildings, dimensions, CLT, like I'll show you Hotel 2. Those are going to be available as soon as we can get them out, which will probably be sometime early next year, and you'll get access to those, and those will sit in your design library. If there's any buildings that you want me to build, please shoot them through. I'm always just looking at Design or something and choosing a building that I like the look of, and then modeling it up. And if you want one in the short term, if something has caught your eye, just let us know and we can share it directly with you.
Awesome. So thanks so much, Rob. I think we're going to cut it off there. Everyone has such amazing questions. If we didn't get to anything, or if you have more questions, feel free to email us directly. I'm at holly@giraffe.build. Rob is rob@giraffe.build. We're happy to help you out with your questions. And if you haven't tried out Giraffe yet, just go on over to app.giraffe.build and sign up for an account and start playing. Rob, any closing remarks?
No, thanks, guys. Thanks for your time. Chat soon.